Mr. Chairman and distinguished delegates, congratulations to you, Mr. Chair, and to members of your Bureau on your election to steer the important work of the Second Committee. Kindly be assured of my delegation's productive engagement and participation in the work of the committee, geared toward a successful outcome of the deliberations of this 73rd session. Mr. Chairman, I am honored to present this statement on behalf of the Liberian delegation at the commencement of activities of the Second Committee for this session. We believe that the theme for this section, making the United Nations relevant to all people, global leadership, and shared responsibilities for peaceful, equitable, and sustainable societies, is a summation of and an embodiment of the 2030 Agenda. For us, this mandates us to galvanize concerted efforts to restore hope to the people of the world through our actions, and to consolidate these efforts to stem out poverty, disease, hunger, and provide sustainable means of livelihood for us all. In the token, we are obliged to protect our vulnerable populations, preserve our environment, not just for ourselves, but for succeeding generations. Mr. Chair, in the spirit of this, we must endeavor to fast-track the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and ensure that no one is left behind, especially that the Secretary General has stated in the Sustainable Development Goals Report 2018, and I quote, "Progress to ensure that no one is left behind has not been rapid enough to meet the targets of the 2030 Agenda, and that the rate of global progress is not keeping pace with the ambitions of the agenda, thus necessitating immediate and accelerated action by countries along with partners and stakeholders at all levels." Unquote. The Liberian delegation therefore believes that the program of work of the committee, which encapsulates thematic items that cut across the economic, social, and environmental dimensions of the Sustainable Development Goals, deserve our fullest attention. We particularly look forward to participating in the joint meeting with the Economic and Social Council, which will focus on infrastructure and debt vulnerability. To make progress in the implementation of the SDGs, scrupulous efforts have to be made in addressing the infrastructure gaps and debt vulnerability in developing countries, especially least developed countries. Mr. Chairman, the Liberian delegation further believes that making the United Nations relevant to the people of the world also means a successful reform of the United Nations development system. This is why we laud the ongoing repositioning process of the system. This will strengthen and realign the United Nations development system to enhance its capacity to deliver on Agenda 2030, particularly in supporting countries to implement the agenda. In this light, permit me, Mr. Chair, to highlight efforts that are being initiated at the level of the Republic of Liberia in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainable development is about improving the living condition of the people. To this end, the government of Liberia, under the leadership of His Excellency Dr. George Manenwia, has designed a national development plan, the Pro-Po Agenda for Prosperity and Development. The overarching goals of the agenda include, but not limited to, empowering the people through reducing developmental inequalities so that the people can prosper, stimulating economic stability and job creation through effective resource mobilization and prudent management of economic inclusion, sustaining peace through the promotion of cohesive society for sustainable development, and enhancing governance and transparency by creating an inclusive and accountable public sector for shared prosperity and sustainable development. Mr. Chair, the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda would depend on both the enabling international environment for development, facilitating the necessary means of implementation, and domestic resource mobilization. Thus, in our national capacity, a more robust domestic resource mobilization strategy is being strengthened to include expanding our internal revenue generation and collection. We know our continued commitment to transparency and accountability in public financial management, as well as capacitating and strengthening national oversight institutions, will be the measure of our resolve in driving these processes. And yet, Mr. Chair, while we, the government of Liberia, and people believe in ourselves to be sufficient in political will, we are insufficient in the available resources we so desperately need. We are therefore availing ourselves to the quality of partnerships regionally and internationally to assist us achieve the full implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. We wish to assure you of the commitment of His Excellency Dr. George Manneh Weah, President of the Republic of Liberia, the government and people of Liberia, towards the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goal. Finally, the Liberian delegation wishes to further assure you, Mr. Chair, of our preparedness to contribute meaningfully to the ensuing substantive discussion during the session. I thank you.